Hey guys, it's Mrs. McCoy back for another week of Library at Home. I hope you all are doing well. I'm super excited about the story we have for this week because it is actually based on a true story. This is called Ada's Violin, and it is the story of the Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay. It's by Susan Hood, and the illustrations are by Sally Wern Comport. Ada's Violin. Here's our title page. Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Cateura. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crash. The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. There's a little math question for you. How many pounds would 1,500 tons be? Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce, and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates? 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing neighborhood. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet, she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know, there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. Every day when Ada's parents went to work, Grandmother Marian cared for Ada and her little sister, Noelia. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with songs and stories of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds each instrument made. Ada heard one above all the others. Zing went the strings of the violin. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge of Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Marian's doggies and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon, they joined their cousins, playing hide-or-seek or a game of handball in the streets. In time, they ventured farther afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in the alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them? To her? To her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. Violin, guitar, cello taught Saturdays at 8 a.m. Fabio Chavez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them, or their parents. Ada's heart sang out. Thanks to her abuela, she could leave her worries behind and learn how to play. At the first class, the teacher, Fabio Chavez, had 3 guitars and 2 violins to share. Ada chose a violin right away. But 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found out that there were not enough instruments to go around. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home. But it wasn't safe to be seen with an expensive instrument in Cateura, where a violin is worth more than a house. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Senor Chavez knew that he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Luthiers that made its own instruments. That was it. He asked Nicolas Cola Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Senor Gomez found a discarded drum with a big hole in it. What could he use to fix it? He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. Would that work? It did. Senor Gomez kept experimenting, and others, like Tito Romero, helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transformed oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. Soon, there were enough instruments for all the children who wanted to play. Ada chose a violin made from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her very own. Senor Chavez set up a strict schedule of 3-hour lessons. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats clanged and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process. It doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, ugly or beautiful. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight, Senor Chavez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes for 2 hours a day. In time, the screeches, twangs, and tweets all hit the right notes. Their class became a small island where Chavez taught them to respect themselves and one another. Be kind, always say please and thank you, say you're sorry, be dedicated when you commit to something, Senor Chavez told the children. Soon, the ragtag crew of kids learned to tune in, to listen to one another, and to band together. The Recycled Orchestra was born. From then on, there was something new in the air in Cateura. Gancheros trudging home from the landfill might lift their heads to hear the sounds of Ada's violin, or the strains of Bebi's cello, or the strum of Noelia's guitar. A symphony of sound helped to lift them beyond the heat, the stench, and their aching backs. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children, too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist. Imagine, she was first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Cateura, and later in the nearby capital city of Asunción. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon, they were asked to perform in other cities, and even other countries. Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue rivers of the Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they had never imagined. The world dazzled them, just as they dazzled the world. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. But she didn't have to worry. As the Recycled Orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played. And as their performance came to a close, a crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Buried in the trash was music. And buried in themselves was something to be proud of. And then here is the author's note, which has more information. There is a photo. I'll go close so you can see. Those are the real children and their recycled instruments that they made. There's a great quote from the director of the band. He said, "The world sends us garbage. We send back music." And he also said, "Music allowed us to connect with other people. Without even speaking the language, we understand each other." So if you check the description, if you're watching on YouTube, if you check the video description, or if you are watching this on Google Classroom, you can check the links that are with this video. And I'm going to have a link to some more information about the Recycled Orchestra, as well as a video of them really playing and showing their instruments. So it's really cool to see the amazing music that they're able to bring out of recycled things. I thought it was kind of the perfect story for, we just had Earth Day this past week. And it also ties in really well with being at home, finding things to do, making do with what we have at home instead of going out and buying new things. So if you are inspired and you want to make your own recycled instrument at home, definitely do so. Let me know. Send me an email. Send me a picture of what you do. If you don't want to make your own recycled instrument, that's fine too. But definitely check out the video of the Recycled Orchestra and their instruments and the amazing things that they were able to accomplish. So I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope that you are still having fun at home and reading and growing your brains. And I will see you next week for another Library at Home. I miss you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.